shakele love. This is love when I wanna get another one. I go take and do waiting I love, waiting you love. Oh, no be waiting I love. Oh, waiting I love. I go do what we done my heart. Oh, go no be vodka. Mr. Money Changer, but when I know the ways that Mr.
You let a yum 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 yum. Nayela pere, mat nayela pese. You let a yum 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 yum. Nayela pere, muna kapela, chora kakisa, bayari yela pere, balungana bayre.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the assembly. We are located out here in the diaspora, and the issues of Ghana are of a serious matter to us. And so we convene every Saturday afternoon to talk about the main topical issues trending in our country, especially as it regards politics and development. Today, the main issues are going to be the arrest of the anti-Galamsey demonstrators who have been detained for about 2 weeks now without bail. We'll also talk about the threat by organized labor to embark on a nationwide strike over the Galamsey issue. And then, if time permits us, we'll talk about the positioning of the Electoral Commission as we approach the December 2024 general elections. But to aid me in this conversation, Fifi Asante, who is the Deputy Communications Officer of NDC UK Ireland, and then my friend Alfred Appiah, who is a data and policy analyst based out in Canada. Hopefully, Zita will join us in the course of the conversation. But gentlemen, you're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Doc.
Yes. All right.
And a very good evening to you too.
Yes, thanks. So we're going to talk about the issue of the anti-Galamsey demonstrators. I think it's been about 2 weeks now since they were arrested. I think most of them were kept beyond the number of hours required by law for people to be, kept in police custody before arraigned before a court. And subsequently, the court denied them bail. I think it's about 54 of them. The irony is that the man who is the president today gained his political popularity from a demonstration that happened in 1995, which is the Kumipreko demonstration. So everyone would have thought that this is a man who would value the right of a citizen to demonstrate in a democracy, since he has benefited personally in terms of his political career from that. But beyond just the personal benefit, demonstration has an integral role in our democracy. And so if you're somebody who really believes in the tenets of democracy, you're not going to be against any group of citizens who decide to hit the streets. So But before we talk about it, I want to play. I want us to throw back, right? We always say the throwback. Let's throw back to 1995. I have a clip here of that demonstration, and then when we get back, we would delve into the matters.
In the name of Jesus Christ.
We knew that the first half of this year would be difficult for the point of view of inflation. And then last year's harvest, food harvest, was the worst we've had since about 1983. So the harvest was so lean that we knew that come this first quarter of the year, there will be problems with food prices.
That's right. The problem is that we haven't been able to...
The policies that the government has been implementing are policies that do not find favor with the general mass of our people, and that the mass of the people of this country have been systematically impoverished during the period of Rawlings's rule. It is not a point of view that has found very much favor in the parts of the world from where you come from, who have been pouring out an endless stream of how so many things wonderful were going on in Ghana.
All right, guys. So this is a much younger Nana Akufo-Addo in 1995, talking about the hardship in the country, right? And in fact, what instigated this demonstration was the 17.5% value-added tax that Parliament had approved. At this time, I think there was no opposition in Parliament. The opposition had actually boycotted the parliamentary election in the 1992 election. So it was only the ruling party that was in power in Parliament, and they approved the 17.5% value-added tax. And I mean, there's a whole story behind that, but to just keep it short, that was basically the camel's back that led to the Kumupreko demonstration. In this demonstration, there were clashes between the Alliance for Change, that was the banner under which the group that went into the demonstration, they went as that, right? And there was a clash between they and the cadres of the NDC. It led to the death of 5 people. 10 people were subsequently arrested. I don't know how those cases ended, but you know, there was fatality in this particular demonstration, but only 10 people were arrested. In this particular case, these are mostly young people that are demonstrating the wanton destruction of our environment by Galamsey activities, and 54 of them were arrested and have been kept without bail for about 2 weeks now. Alfred, let me start with you because you have been passionate about this issue. We belong to the same WhatsApp platform, and I've seen things that you have put out there. So what are your initial impressions about this whole thing?
Well, I like to start by saying that any kind of protest or demonstration that doesn't make people in power uncomfortable is not effective. And I also want to say that the police over the years they have been misinterpreting the Public Order Act. They have been misinterpreting it to make it sound like they are the final authority on protest and that they can decide where and how you should demonstrate. And that's the whole thing. So you will see that some people might make points about, oh, the NDC did protest or this group did protest. There were no issues, and that was because those groups, when they met with the police, they were willing to basically go with whatever the police said right? Or go use this route. Because even the current protest that's happening, there was an agreement with the police, right, about where the protest should happen. But of course, in the case of the Democracy Hub, the group that got arrested, they also understand that, because they knew that they were not going to have the numbers enough, that you have to be really do something to show, to be not to say distractive, but like, they have to see you, and you have to hold your protest at a place where it's visible, right? And so this whole thing of, and I know people have talked about excesses and all of that, but even if they did, some of them did break the law, it is up to the courts to determine that, right? The police manhandling them, arresting them, detaining them, that is not acceptable. And it doesn't help that the courts then go ahead to not grant them bail, because I don't think it sets a very good precedent for when it comes to how demonstrations should work in the country. And the other thing is that in all of this, the courts have really enabled the police. So this Democracy Hub protest, they notified the police 3 months ahead of time. The Public Order Act, I believe, says 5 days or something like that, a couple of days, that you have to let the police know. You have to inform the police. It's not that you are getting approval from the police. You inform the police. Democracy Hub informed the police 3 months prior to the protest. So if the police had any issues with the location where they were planning to do the protest, they could have let it known a long time ago, right? So it sounds to me that this whole thing is just, it's just a like a punishment, denying them bail. I feel it's a gross abuse of state power. And you know what is funny? Yesterday at the protest that's happening now, there were a group of youth that are not affiliated to the current protest. That basically what they did was they basically ran over the police barricades that were set at the protest. Ask yourself, has any of those people been arrested? Has the police issued any statement telling us about what has happened to those people? Because we understand that some of the youth in that group were affiliated to the chief imam. They were part of the chief imam's entourage or something like that. So you see, so there's basically there's a selective application of the so-called law. Like all those people who are talking about, none of them is saying any of these. Like the law is the law. They broke the law. They did excesses. What did they do that is in excess of what these guys have done? They basically ran over police barricade and nothing has happened. The police hasn't issued any statement. It's like business as usual, right? But this is not business as usual. So this is where I find issues, because it's just more of like selectively applying the law to certain people. And I don't think it's a good precedent, and especially for a precedent that was integral in the video that you just played about the 1995 Kobe Preco demonstration. You would expect him being a human rights lawyer that this will not be happening. And I have told people that I don't want to hear this whole thing of, oh, there's separation of powers. There's a police is acting on its own, the courts. I don't believe any of that. Right? Because we know how things work in Ghana. Of course, the boss of the police is appointed by the president. So how is he supposed to be independent? And so I just feel like I keep thinking about it. I cannot understand why anybody will be remanded for 2 weeks simply for protesting. Even if you claim they broke the law, this is misdemeanor. Is that a non-bailable offense? Right? Because people even get bail for murder. So what are you talking about? So I just feel like it's just they are finding ways to basically punish them, and the law really frowns on that. Like, and I'm not a lawyer, but I know that you cannot use bail as punishment, right? You cannot use bail as punishment.
But Alfred, but even if, is there any political benefit to really punishing people who embarked on, even if the demonstration was unlawful? What is the benefit to the ruling government? Because I mean, from every indication, they may be behind this. The police is not doing this just out of their own will. So the question that I ask, is there really any political gain to the government?
Well, I don't think, I think our government is PR driven, right? It's always about its image in the international media. And so I don't think it expected this to get to this extent, that even for after that happening, and then now there's even more protests. And and one of the markers that you could see, like the the CNN journalist, the Kenyan, is his name Kenyan or is it Kenyan? Larry something, Larry Mado or something.
Yeah, I think it's Kenyan. Yes,
he tweeted about it, and the guy and Ghana's information minister responded to it. So you could see that they're always worried about what the international media is going to capture. Now it's all over. It's on NBC.
Yeah, but,
Al Jazeera reported it. So
yeah, but it's Ghana. You know, we are very vocal when it comes to politics. So the idea that someone can suppress, you know, the Ghanaian public is amazing to me, because I mean, Akufo-Addo's claim to fame is from activities such as this. So to think that you can silence protesters as a way of projecting the party or the government in a good light, I cannot really understand which political novice would give such a strategy, right? But after that, I'll come back to you. But let me go to Fifi quickly, right? Fifi, now, I heard the Deputy Attorney General on radio, right? And the journalist was questioning him about this whole thing of keeping or detaining these, if you like, arrested, you know, for now, the suspects, and detaining them for almost 2 weeks now without bail. His argument was that it's the court that determines whether to give bail or not to give bail. Again, we are not lawyers, but we have watched enough law stuff on TV to know that usually the prosecution would either, you know, argue that bail should not be given. And I think they made that argument in court. But, and I mean, the journalist held his feet to the fire just enough, but not, I thought he should have gone all the way. But at some point, he left him off the hook on that subject matter. He insisted that it was the decision of the court. But I think the pushback should have been that, did you argue that they shouldn't be granted bail? And if you did, on what grounds? Now, Alfred just mentioned that, you know, we would be pretending if we assume that these institutions are acting independently. What do you think is the government's role in all of this? You are muted.
Yeah, I'll mute myself. Thank you, Doc, and very good evening to Zita and Alfred, co-panelists. Great to have you here and to share the same platform with you to discuss these things tonight at my end. I believe it's morning or afternoon at your end. Yes. Is very surprising. And from the video that you played, I'm going to quote a man that has been very controversial in many of his writings, and people don't, or politicians don't tend to quote him. But in his writings as well, there are a lot of substance in there that sometimes we don't dive in to look into it. And that is Niccolo Machiavelli. And he stated something very, very profound in this case, based on that video that you played, that for time brings with it all things, and it may produce indifferent, either good or evil. So when Akufo-Addo and his Alliance for Change back then were demonstrating, and through that demonstration that they rose to fame, and today that time has brought with it all things, and now we are determined whether these things that time has brought with is either good or evil. We have already seen evil from Akufo-Addo being on that throne and now overseeing the very things that helped him rose to fame. Now, let me go direct to your question. Yes, we all know there is separation of powers. The police will do their arrest. The court will then determine, which is the judiciary. But we also know that the country called Ghana, as we speak, the court or the government of the day is in bed with the judiciary. We've seen so many cases. I don't want to go into them today for the sake of time. And the judiciary influences some of these actions. Sorry, the government influences some of these actions by the judiciary. And that is exactly what they've done. Hence, they can stand on the podium and say to themselves that, look, we don't determine, it's the court. They're pushing the case to the court. Who in their right mind would put protesters who are not a threat to the government. They are not a threat to the nation, but rather protesters who are saying that government do something about this galamsey, the cyanide, the mercury that are seeping through our soil, our water bodies, and killing all of us. All of us. They are speaking on behalf of the entire Ghanaians. And for that reason, 54 of them arrested. The very judge that has put them behind bars reminded them for 2 weeks these protesters were speaking on behalf of that judge and the judge's family. It's beyond me, Doc. I just don't understand Ghanaians, how we think, and how this very government, NPP government, are pursuing the tangent they are moving. It's very dangerous.
Okay.
Very, very, very dangerous.
All right.
And to me, wisdom has to rule in this matter. Wisdom has to rule. These people should be released immediately. It's a disgrace to our judiciary. It's a disgrace to this NPP government and a disgrace to Ghana as a whole. Thank you.
Okay. So Zita, have we become helpless as a country? Because this protest went on over Galamsey, which is a problem. And these young people were arrested, detained unlawfully. The act of even detaining people who haven't committed violent crimes without bail is a crime in itself. But it looks like the government is licensed to be criminal in its conduct. There are subsequent protests in favor of the protesters, right? So it makes me wonder that in a democracy, are the people helpless? Because protests, in my opinion, based on the evidence, don't work.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to say good evening to all your panelists. It's good to be back. For those of you who missed me, I was going through a transition, so I had to take some hiatus and just organize myself. It's been quite sad following everything that is happening in Ghana. And I do not think, and like we always say on this platform, the way Africa, to a large extent, even Ghana practices democracy, it's interesting because what is happening in Ghana is looking like an autocracy where the human rights abuses. It is the fundamental human right of citizens of Ghana to protest. It is. But however, they are currently being, their rights is being infringed upon by the government. And so when we say democracy, and that is why when, growing up in Ghana, when people say democracy is kebi mamin kebi, I'm like, it goes beyond kebi mamin kebi. The fact that we can sit here and speak our minds, and for our non-Ghanaian audience, kebi mamin kebi simply means you speak your mind, I speak my mind. But democracy goes beyond that. And for this government to actually infringe on the rights, and the beautiful thing about this is that we are in the time of social media is powerful. And like we said, when it started in Kenya, there's a wind that is blowing. And I am utterly surprised that the Ghanaian youth are standing resolute. I commend a particular father. He was being interviewed and he was asked, your son, he said, if my son would die for this cause, I'm not coming here to take my son out of the prison. I'm coming here to support what my son is doing because my son is part of those who are rewriting the history of Ghana. And so it is this ability for all of us to gather this momentum, this invisible thing that binds us called social media for the international community. I was surprised. There is a very popular TikToker with more than 10 million or 20 million followers. He reported on Ghana and his post got over 500,000 likes and retweets and reposts and all that. So it is gaining momentum, and everybody's looking at how Ghana is conducting itself. This is not a democracy. This is autocracy. This is abusing people's fundamental human rights. It is unacceptable for us to have a president who has, credentials in the law profession. It is unacceptable. Those protesters needs to be released. And to land my commentary, we have Cecilia Dapa, who had over $1 million in her home and other foreign currencies. She was not found guilty, and there was no grounds to indict her for money laundering. However, innocent Ghanaians going out to protest because we are at the brink of losing our health due to water pollution as a result of small scale, and because we conflate, small scale miners who have legal permit and those we conflict the two, small scale and illegal mining activities. It is unacceptable. So for me, and I just want to say this, even though we are all talking about small scale mining, for me the corruption is happening at the bigger scale mining as well, because they use the greater proportion of cyanide. Mercury is more of the small scale mining terrain. So when people are, and I have gotten a lot of backlash, so I've refrained from making commentary, even though my master's thesis is on artisanal mining. But for me, we need to also look at the large scale mining sector and how that is a breeding ground for corruption. Because when it comes to the large scale mining, it is the big wigs. It is the those in the executive, they are making the huge chunk and getting the kickbacks from these international companies. And it is the other smaller politicians who are now also trying to loot from the small scale mining. So even though most people are not reading enough to know that the large scale mining is also a breeding ground for massive corruption in Ghana. And therefore the entire extractive sector is just like we said, it's become a cartel where people have invested interest such that anybody who protests against their invested interest will be will have their rights infringed upon. So this is a mess. Ghana have always had the reputation of being, the gateway to Africa and one of the most friendliest place to go. But when you're on social media and what is being reported, it is against the image that we have created for Ghana, and we need to bow our heads in shame. Release those innocent people, and I encourage all Ghanaian youth, those of us abroad are solidly behind you. If some of us are able to make it to Ghana, we'll be on the streets protesting with you. We need to secure a Ghana that our future can live in, because not everybody can leave Ghana. We can't all get visas to leave the country, so we must secure the future and the interest of the unborn.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even about getting visas and leaving, but Ghana is home. It's not everyone's desire to leave the country.
Oh, you did not hear? There was a video of a young man said he's doing galamsey, destroying Ghana to get money to live to America. Don't know what's going on. Jackpot is the one.
All of us moved out here with the aspiration to go back home, so we wanted to be in perfect condition.
But Ghana, you have had. I was just telling my mother that. She will be in Ghana and she realized I'm packed and I'm back home, and she said I should come home. But you have tasted both worlds, so you would know what is best. But believe me, the majority of Ghanaians,
I get it. But still, we have to leave the country in good condition. But I mean, Alfred, I'm going to this point about whether protests work, because in 1995 it worked. The government, in fact, even though it was approved by Parliament, they pulled the value-added tax. Subsequently, it came back on board. Even the NDC MPP that demonstrated against it came into power and increased it, right? But the protest in that moment worked. Now, over the past few years, I'm coming to the belief that it looks like we've become numb to protests. I don't know if Ghana's democracy is structured in a way that the very structure of the democracy has made protests ineffective. I had this conversation with a friend where I took this position that Ghana's problems are structured in a way that it gives the ruling government the legitimacy to suppress protest without any sort of consequence. I don't know what's your take on that, just the general idea about whether protests work or not. And also, I think some politicians have soiled protest over the years. We saw the case of Occupy. What was it? What was it? Occupy
Ghana.
Occupy Ghana, exactly. Some of these professional types who were parading as neutrals and that they were demonstrating in the broader interest of the country, then the NPP comes into power, and it turns out that all these guys had interests. So people have become very cynical about demonstration. And we've heard ideas about the leaders of the Democracy Hub basically using it to front so that when NDC comes into power, they may be, looked upon as people who merit political positions and what have you. So what is your take on this whole idea that demonstrations are no longer effective in Ghana?
Well, I think there are multiple ways of demonstrating, right? And part of what, and both parties do it. Part of the strategy they've been doing is they try to make it like a political party's demonstration, and so that is how they make it ineffective, right? And so that's why they're particularly after they're particularly concerned about the Democracy Hub one. So I feel they're more concerned because it's not clear that even though people have made allegations here and there, like they've tried to tag like the lead convener, Oliver Barker, that he used to work even at the time in the previous government, he was like a consultant, or he works at the Jubilee House or the Flagstaff House or something like that. So I think that the idea behind this whole thing, that whether protests work or not, I think it depends, right? If they are able to successfully target as the opposition just doing demonstration, the opposition funding it, right? Then they can easily dismiss it, right? They can easily say, oh, it's just the NDC that is not happy. And if the NDC were in power, and then they might say the same thing, like, oh, it's the NPP that's just demonstrating, right? So I think that's one of the things that they struggle to do with this particular one, with the Democracy Hub group, right? So even though they've tried, right, like there were times that they released some fake letters, like, oh, the former President Mahama is funding them or has issued some money for them to be funded and all of that. Of course, all of that was fake news. But the strategy was they were trying to make sure that if they can successfully move it into this bucket of a partisan protest, then they can easily dismiss it, because then it's just NPP, NDC back-to-back matter, right? But I think what is also different about this one and some of the other previous, at least this one I should say, is the fact that labor unions are also talking about similar thing, or basically the same thing. So then you can see that it's not just a group of young people, but also the labor unions, the CSOs are talking about the same issue. So you cannot, as a government that's in power, you cannot ignore all this. It couldn't be that the opposition has paid these Democracy Hub people, has been able to pay this the civil the CSOs, has been able to pay the labor unions to now be singing the same song. So I think in a way, this particular one, and I mean, of course, and then what else? The other thing that I know we'll talk about the labor unions later, but I think it's good to see that the labor unions have now realized how much power they hold when it comes to democracies, and when it comes to government policy, and how effective they are, and how they can influence things, right? Because for a long time, like if the labor front had stood up to a lot of things like e-levy and some of all these other very unpopular policies, if labor had really stood up to those stuff, I think some of those policies wouldn't have gone through, right? So I think there's different angles that are targeted, but again, this could be a one-off, because again, this is an existential matter. This is something that is going to impact everything, literally, and so everybody is really concerned about that. Do we expect the same type of push in other issues? Probably not. So I think the effectiveness of protests, I would say, it's overall. I can't give you an overall answer. I think it's case by case.
Okay. So, but the irony is that you touched on something, but do you think that if this protest was largely politically motivated or sponsored, they would have treated the protesters the way they are treating them right now? I mean,
no, they wouldn't. But that's because they wouldn't do that. But that's because they know they can easily dismiss that protest. So regardless, like let the NDC protest whatever they. So see the NDC protested against the Bank of Ghana boss, right? They did a lot protest. What has happened to the Bank of Ghana boss? He's still in power. He's still there. He's still
but
the boss of the Bank of
I'm
Ghana.
even talking about the treatment of the protesters.
Yes,
because it almost feels like if you are independent, it's riskier protesting than if you are affiliated to a political party, especially the major ones. Because the way these guys have been treated, I don't think if these protesters were largely known NDC protesters, they would have been detained for 2 weeks without bail.
Because,
So
I agree. It wouldn't have been the case. They wouldn't have done that like if it was the NDC. But what I'm saying is that the link to that is though they know the potential of like the group that they can associate as partisan. They know the impact of that, so they have to do a lot more to prevent them from actually being able to assemble. If it's the NDC, they know that, it's the NDC. The NDC is like complaining. The NDC is just complaining. Let them go and protest, do their thing. At the end of the day, we'll dismiss us as NDC. They did worse when they were in government. Basically, is what they would say. But with this group that that is not partisan, it's clearly not partisan, right? You could see that they have to do a lot more to try to suppress that because if you're able to help them, if you're able to make them gather in numbers and all of that. They could be, and you cannot really dismiss whatever they're saying, right? So I think that's where the difference is. So to me personally, I don't use a partisan protest as like a yardstick for determining whether protesters are getting suppressed or not. Because once it's partisan, they have ways of dismissing the protest. But if it is non-partisan, then there's a lot more work to be done. And so what they can do is they can try to make sure that, because part of that, getting all the police, they're arresting people. Of course, the idea was to make sure that others that are home that are not so sure whether they wanted to come to the protest, once they hear the arrest, now they're going to stay home. They're not going to come. They'll just protest on social media, but not actually show up in person, right? And so, I think it's case by case basis.
Okay. So, Fifi, there are people on the sidelines who say that the police is like a mercenary, right? And they are used to do the bidding of whichever political party is in power. So, you being a communications officer for a chapter of the NDC, what do you think is different from the NDC compared to the MPP in the way they have treated protests? Because, we've seen, maybe not to a similar scale, but we've seen attempts to suppress protesters and the police being used to perform, actions that are not lawful in terms of dealing with opposition groups that cast government in a negative light. Give us the contrast, if you will, if there's any.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. I believe all Ghanaians, many of us can witness when the NDC was in power, the numerous protests that happened across Ghana. You mentioned Occupy Ghana, led by Asan Kuma, Kofi Bentel, and all these people. At a point that I remember Asan Kuma stood on a podium or during a protest and then said that I'm working like a boo, and the president should also be working like a boo to ensure that my lights are on. At a point, he even insulted His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, and when he was actually his attention was due to it, his answer was, there is nowhere in the Constitution that says that we cannot insult a president. This was how bold these people were. Now today, let's turn the tables around. Even before I turn the tables around, John Dramani Mahama and the NDC government were very okay with protesting. Yes, there were protesting that happened that it was a bit aggressive or it was a bit heavy-handed by the police. But John Dramani Mahama and the NDC has always paved way for protesting because they understand that protesting is part of our legal rights as citizens. The more you suppress people, when they step out there and have the opportunity to protest, then they're going to do even violent things. So the NDC never did this. The courts were never used during NDC era to sentence protesters. I don't have any history of such or document on such. Yes, people may have been arrested, but they were released based on the rate of habeas corpus. Nobody should be detained more than 24 hours without presenting them before court. In this case, they've been presented before court. The court has remanded them 2 weeks. So you could see the two parties or the two governments are totally different. They are totally different. And today, Ghanaians themselves will vouch that the NDC and John Dramani Mahama administration was very okay when it comes to protesting. They had no issues with it. They had no issues with it. The number of protests that went on our street, the things that were said. I remember Kofi Bento, as you said, at that point, none of us knew all these people were just fronting. They were part of the NPP then.
Yeah.
Because it was after the election has been won, we saw Kofi Bento in the President Akufo-Addo's house doing a selfie, his own video, amateur video, saying that, oh, this is our new president. You see, he opens his door, everybody comes in, we all come and enjoy, look at his cars, and we thought, oh, so that was the plan.
All right. Okay. Well, I mean, let's shift gears here. Zita, let's go to the issue of organized labor. Okay. Alfred has a point to make on this.
Well, yeah, I think Fifi, like we have to also be fair with certain things.
Okay.
We know about the police during the Let My Vote Count protest in 2015. The police basically were molesting people at the time. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. Maybe we've forgotten about that. Like, so it hasn't always been smooth like the way you were talking about it, because again, but this is why I talk about like the police, right? Like, and the fact that the independence and all of that, because at least that example, and that one, again, this way, and back to my earlier point, the protesters, because we were also trying to make impacts at the time, they tried to veer off like the route that they had agreed with the police. But of course, the police were not happy with that. And of course, there was a lot of tear gas and some people were molested and all of that. So I think we just have to keep that in mind. I just wanted to make that point. Thanks.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Just a quick one to what Alfred just said. In my submission, I'm not saying that during NDC era, it was all rosy walk on the park when it comes to protesting. But the NDC was okay with protesting. Yes, the police might have heavy-handed some of the protesters. We never saw anything of such nature that protesters have been remanded 2 weeks in imprisonment. Or that is the point.
The difference here is the magnitude.
Absolutely. Is the magnitude and how, as we speak, they are using these people as a deterrent for people to stay home, because the government it's lost everything. The government is very unpopular.
But I find that amazing because, Ghana's democracy, or Ghana as a country, was built on protests, right? I mean, the 1948 riots that led Nkrumah into jail, and he actually won the election in jail and had to be released. So historically, Ghanaians have been very vocal. We had a viable opposition even at independence. So being vocal and speaking against the ruling government has been with Ghana as a country from the very beginning. So I just feel that is counterproductive for anybody, any ruling party, to think that they're going to make themselves popular by suppressing protests. I mean, it's unimaginable to me that people who claim to be savvy in politics would think in this manner. But Zita, we're going to the organized labor stuff, right? They have threatened to go on strike, over Galamsey. The devastation of Galamsey, I mean, I think we've whipped that horse a lot on this platform. And I mean, the BEV defects, and we can name them. But yes, Alfred already gave us a segue into that, the power that organized labor possesses. they were able to let the government rescind its sale of SNIT to Brana Champon. And perhaps they should have started this much earlier with respect to other issues, as Alfred mentioned. But they are threatening to go on strike, and the president is telling them to hold on and that he's going to address it. I don't know how sincere he is about that call, but what is your take?
Yeah, well, just before I share my take, I wanted to touch on two things Alfred said regarding the concept of the current people protesting being, kind of apolitical or not partisan.
Okay.
We need to also understand that we have just 60 something days to election. So protest must also be tied to, or demonstration must be tied to, a political season. The stakes are high. And so again, they understand that allowing I don't want to use the word unruly, but right now the youth of Ghana is desperate. They're struggling with poverty. When you have young people who have a lot of energy and they are not using that energy for self-growth and development, it is dangerous. So this attempt of remanding innocent, citizens for protesting is to send a strong message. However, we must also not forget the concept of political godfathers. If these non-partisan had known people, and that is why we talked about, if it was NDC that had organized it, they would not have been manhandled, because they would have political godfathers, irrespective of the political party that is in power. People, even opposition, have the ability to pull strings here and there. They have their people in places to make sure that their own people are taken care of. So I just wanted to touch on the season and also the concept of political godfatherism, that if you're not tied to, anybody important, and you go out there and protest, you are virtually on your own at that point.
Yeah.
And anything that happens to you will happen to you. I wanted to just make those points. Regard to organized labor, you said it well. I think that I do understand the importance of they going on strike. The country will be on shutdown. We can't, public sector workers, people who take public transport, like the entire country was shut down. And if we had known that they would be effective, because it was through the SNIT situation that we knew that, any attempt by them to go on strike is deadly for Ghana. And I was just watching some news reportage preparing for this show, and somebody said, strike is not a demonstration. Strike is a form of demonstration. One of the journalists was like, organized labor. Somebody, I think one of the guests was like, organized labor is going on a demonstration, and the person who was manning the show said, oh no, they are going on strike. Strike is a form of demonstration, right? Mm-hmm. It's a form, it's a different form that has strong economic penalties for the country. And so I am happy that organized labor is taking a stand. And like we've all said, this is not, we see, and it's the way people politicize a very serious national issue. Because it's not just like people are saying that we know about the birth defects and all that, but even large-scale mining, the drilling and blasting leads to particulate matter in the air that leads to serious respiratory problems. Mm-hmm. So whilst we need to, my thing is the narrow focus, and Galamsey has done a lot of damage, but this whole issue is to get us to revisit our mining act, revisit our mining policies. And just make sure that moving forward, we can come together, people from all different sectors, health, geology, professors, we put together a very robust team to evaluate and make recommendations so we can move forward. This is a national issue. And like we say, some people always go like, those of you abroad, you are living abroad. And no, because now we have to be paying for our family back home to be using Baltic water. Hey, Bogus, are you losing?
Listen, Zita, living abroad is not an escape. You understand?
But so we are
people who argue that way usually, nobody has escaped. So there are
those in Ghana would tell you that you are sitting abroad, because I have a friend on social media. She's extremely vocal. Since this thing happened, this lady has been posting back to back, stitching, bringing awareness, and you go to the comments and she's been insulted. You come back home. If you want to then come back home and protest. But we carry the economic burden. That's just my point. We carry the economic burden of our families back home. So we are the ones that, if push comes to shove, our pocket will bleed. And who, like they said, who watches the watchman? Who helps the helper? Who helps
Yeah.
us when we have nothing? Because I know even in Canada, Calgary had a water crisis, and their mayor told them, shower once a day. If it's better to drink beer than to drink water. Can you imagine? Even Canada, Calgary, a city in Alberta, had the whole water situation to the point where they said, "Don't wash your car. Take, one shower a day. Instead of drinking water, drink beer." And that is just a country that is a first world country. So we don't even want to tread on that level of dangerous ground where our water reserves are being polluted. I also see, and I will land my ship with this, I also see this concept of tribalism coming into this whole Galamsey thing. You know, I'm on social media and I'm hearing my brothers and sisters from the Volta region say, "Oh, well, we thank God it's happening." No. Have you seen the water? Like, have you seen, the Volta Lake? Like, it's we are already being harmed, because my mom comes from Kejiketa, is a mainly fishing community. And just a month ago, my mother was trying to send us like small tilapia. We eat this small tilapia, and she was trying to get us to fry some and send it to us. And it's like it was hard to find a particular type called bovilolo. It was hard to find that type of fish. So I see even the interplay of this concept of tribalism and ethnic thing going on underneath this big problem of Galamsey, because some regions are, after all, and a politician was reckless enough to say that, Accra, it's happening in Ashanti region. So if you like, are we okay? For me, these are the things I'm watching out for. The petty ethnic sentiments that some people in the voter region, that's an Ashanti. It's not an Ashanti or regional problem, or areas that have, mining reserves, because the waters flow into each other. So we are all struggling. And so, dear Ghanaians, please, this is a national issue.
It's a national issue.
Let's put our politics, let's put our ethnicity or tribe aside, and let's stand together as Ghana and fight this.
Yeah. I mean, especially in the current world that we live in, environmental issues really have no boundaries, especially, Ghana, you buy food from one end of the country to the other. So the idea that this is only a problem for a specific group of people and not the entire country is just fool's handy. But, Fifi, it looks like Galamsey has become the most important issue going into this election. Historically, it has only, I think, one of the things that have determined election in Ghana has always been corruption. Not even so much the economy, because it looks like the economy is always a problem. But on top of the economy, there's always going to be an issue. And historically, it has always been corruption. Now it looks like corruption has been pushed to the back burner, and now it is Galamsey. What do you think are the political implications? Because the president asking organized labor not to go on the strike, I guess he has the implications on the election in mind. But it looks like he's caught up between a rock and a hard place, because if they go on strike, it has economic implications, and going into an election and not acting on Galamsey, in my opinion, may have some implications.
That's correct, Doc. Going into this election, 7th December, or upcoming election, beginning, it was the biggest issue was more corruption and the economy. And they've said this several times that the economy was on top of the agenda. Now it seems it has shifted from the economy to Galamsey as one of the factors. And it's at the moment, as you just mentioned, it looks like Galamsey is sitting on top of the hierarchy. And Doc, the Galamsey is also a part of corruption that started by this government. And that is one thing we Ghanaians have to note. And I will quote, I tend to do a lot of quotes these days before I kind of break it down. Machiavelli said something very profound. And I seem to be quoting Machiavelli a lot. Oh my God. And I quote, The desire to acquire possessions is a very natural and ordinary thing. And when those men who do it, who can do it so successfully, they are always praised and not blamed. But when they cannot yet want to do so at all costs, they make a mistake, deserving a great blame. And that is to do with this Galamsey. When this government came into power, if you look into the Ejapadia document, they had over 100 companies, nearly 200 small-scale mining companies formed by the MPP big whips who were given licenses to go and mine. The biggest of them was Akunta Mining. We all know of Professor Boating's report, which came out, and we know of the tape Party Hiesika report, or that got leaked. Over 500 excavators were seized. These excavators were then released to the party apparatchiks for them to go back. Those who were issued prospecting licenses ended up mining in a forest reserves that were not meant to be mined. This is our predicament as a country. So the entire Galamsey thing was started with a corruption. It brewed from a desire to acquire more for party and individuals. And now it has actually out of control. It has totally spun out of control. So yeah. Galamsey, as we speak about, it sits on the agenda, but this Galamsey is coupled with the corruption of this government.
Yeah.
And we will never, Ghanaians will never forgive this government of all the promises, this MPP, Bawumia Akufo-Addo government, of all the promises that they promised Ghanaians. The economic promises that were made, positive economic promises, that none were fulfilled. The things that were said, the drones that were acquired, we were told $3 million US was used to acquire drones to fight this Galamsey menace. Only to be told this week that those 3 million drones have gone missing. They are even nowhere to be found. I've asked several times, where are the drones? Where are the drones? Where are the drones? Now we've been told the drones are actually disappeared. Drones, 3 million worth of drones is not.
If you know drones fly, right?
Oh yes, drones fly. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And even excavators flown quicker than I confirmed. So how much more drones? Excavators, 500 of them. They flew quicker than I confirmed. So how much more drones, Doc?
Yeah.
Going into the forthcoming election, the three things on the agenda: the corruption coupled up with the Galamsey and the economic. This government has failed on all sectors. They have given Ghanaians a bad check, and Ghanaians on 7th December will show them where the power lies. Thank you.
Okay. Sometimes when you get a rejected check, they charge you for it. So I'm guessing. But anyway, Alfred, so, what do you think the government should do with respect to this threat by organized labor to go on strike? Because, again, between the rock and the hard place, we barely 3 months to the elections. So what reasonable action could really come out of the presidency with respect to what organized labor is threatening?
Well, I think first of all, the president reportedly asking for more time. Mm-hmm. I don't understand it, because organized labor didn't even act fast enough, in my opinion, because you already gave the government up to the end of September. So I don't even understand why labor decided that they're going to do the strike on the 10th of October. Basically, you're giving the government a grace period, right? So I cannot understand why the government would ask labor for more time. And when you look at the demands of organized labor, right? Mm-hmm. They say declare a state of emergency. What how much time is the president asking for? If the president indeed is concerned about the threat of Galamsey, like the rest of the country is talking about, or at least the rest of the country that is not paid by the government is talking about, right? I say that with that context because it appears that there's a bucket of people that don't feel that Galamsey is going to impact them somehow, right? And so apart from those group of people, everybody is really talking about this. So it's basically an emergency. It's a national emergency. So if the president is asking for more time, then I think that the president doesn't see it that way, that we see. So Labour says declare a state of emergency. Labour is saying that halts all mining, all forms of mining that is closer to water bodies. That's even the existing law already. Like you shouldn't, I think there's like a certain amount of distance that you shouldn't be mining closer to a water body. So that's already enforcing the existing law. They say halt any form of mining in forest reserves. Revoke that LI 2462. And I think that the LI that allows people to mine in forest reserves, I cannot understand why that even came into being. But regardless, that's the one where somebody might say, "Oh, you need to get Parliament to come back and all of that." But remember, recently, earlier in September, Parliament was recalled, and one of the things that was on there was for them to come and approve tax exemptions under the failed 1D1F project initiative. So if Parliament can be recalled for something like that, and you remember the minority even said that it was a waste of time for them to be recalled. So I think that if there's a political will to repeal that LI, recalling Parliament is not going to be an issue because, of course, the Parliament is already, people in the minority are already concerned about that. We've not heard so much from the majority, which is also one of the things that I always find interesting in our political space, in our democracy, is that we are so partisan that you hardly see dissenting voices in the same party. So you hardly see that the party person is criticizing the policy of the party. I think it's very problematic for our democracy. But I think that when you look at all the demands from Labour, I don't think there's any of those demands that it's like too much that government says it needs time. But I think that comes back to this whole idea that they feel that there's some people that feel, and some MPs have said it, that in the last election, because they quote unquote fought Galamsey, they lost certain seats. There is no evidence to support that. Like when you look at some of them, when you look at Equitia, when you look at some of those examples that they're using, it's just basically some of those constituencies were already swinging.
Yeah.
So if it swings to the other side, there is no evidence, right, that shows that they actually lost that seat because of fighting Galamsey.
Yeah, I think I even heard an MPP MP make the argument that they didn't lose because of Galamsey. Yeah.
Yeah, they did not. They did not, and that's the thing. And so but people have these narratives, right, that they form, and then they just run with it, and then but in any case, that tells you about the priority of the government then, right? Like, because the government is prioritizing winning elections over trying to save water bodies. So basically, when you look at the demands of Labour, I don't think that any of them is such that a president has has the political will, right, to address Galamsey. Will do that. Like, you see some of the utterances that some of them, even like, I think Madame Kijamfu or something, I think is he the national organizer or something of the National Women's Organizer, saying things like, if we fight Galamsey, like we should wait till after the elections, then we can all fight Galamsey together. So you hear some of these utterances, then it's like, and earlier this week, Bright Simmons made a post that about how he doesn't think that, or he was questioning whether the current government is actually using political consultants to guide their campaign, because previously they would use that. And I think, because I struggle to see what the ruling party's strategy is in this whole Galamsey thing.
Yeah.
Because basically nobody is listening to your campaign message apart from your base, apart from your political base. And we know that no party in Ghana has the base that is strong enough to win the elections. You're always going to need the people that float. You're always going to need them to win an election. So what message is, everybody is talking about Galamsey, but of course, the vice president hasn't said anything about Galamsey, right? Yeah. About all the protests, everything that's happening.
So Alfred, that's the thing that I've always been thinking, because I've had these conversations equally with, maybe high school mates and all that about, I think taking a position against Galamsey is a winning issue. So the idea that a government that or a party that acts against Galamsey is likely to lose the election is something that I find it difficult to really understand.
Well, that's the thing. Like I said, there's no evidence. They don't have any evidence to support it. It's just a narrative that somebody has created. So the last election, the president won, but they lost some seats in some parliamentary areas, right? So now they're using that as a narrative that it was because they fought Galamsey. How much aggressive fighting of Galamsey was done in 2020 even? Right. And so this is where it's like people have, like I said, people have these things in their minds, right? And like I have some data to even show that even when they said they had banned small-scale mining mining was still contributing to overall gold production, about a third of gold production in between 2017, 2018, and then 2019. So even the whole ban of Galamsey and all small-scale mining was not even effective. And so this whole thing that they are talking about, there's no evidence to support it. But
well, I mean, if it wasn't effective, then it meant that the activity was still going on. And so if there was any electoral loss that would happen, wouldn't have really happened because the people were not end off in any way. So
there is no evidence. There is no evidence to support it. But they ran with it, right? Because but again, regardless, even if there was evidence to support that, you're telling the Ghanaian people, and listen, like I said, the party base is the party base. Every party has their base. Like the party base, no matter what, they will still vote for the party, or worst case scenario, they will stay home. You're always appealing to the people that are floating. Those are the people that your messaging is targeting. So if these people say I'm undecided, if I'm an undecided voter, right, I swing. And today you are telling me that we will have to wait until after elections before you deal with an existential crisis. What are you telling me? Right? So such a message will work with the base. The base, it doesn't matter. They don't need that message.
But what is the base, the interest of the base? And let me go to Zita with this. What is the interest of the base in supporting Galamsey? Because, maybe the argument is in terms of those who sponsor these political parties, right? But if it comes to the general electorate, I don't see how it's a loss to a party to take a stance against Galamsey in this election, because I haven't heard anyone support Galamsey, even in communities that have gold. And if you want to take the people that benefit from Galamsey, they are in the minority. So as to how it would amount to an electoral loss is something that really I cannot really get my analytical mind to understand.
But Agana, one of the discourse I've also heard, and I can understand why Alfred would make that connection to base, is that people in the industry are claiming that it provides jobs for a lot of people. And so there was a story of somebody saying, oh, I finished school and I have friends who are working in public sector, and just a few years in doing, a few months into doing Galamsey, I've had this, I've bought that, I've done that. And so that particular, narrative is quite, the issue. So I think that politicians are thinking that if they clamp down on it, then some of their hardcore supporters, because we need to understand that, like I was saying, geography and ethnicity is playing into this whole situation, even though it's a national issue, geography, because some regions are not heavy with the mining. And so you need to understand that it is providing some sort of employment for those in the mining areas, right? And that is the base of the MPP. Do you understand? And so that's where that discourse is coming from.
Okay.
That when they clamp down on it, then it will in a way affect their, the politics. However, this is a national issue because in terms of mining, it is geography specific. I come from the Volta region and there's not a huge mining. However, our rivers, we have fishing is huge in the region. And of course, Kente even in that and farming, but fishing is like, mainly something that we pride ourselves in the Volta region, as most of us tend to come from the coastal area, right? And so we see the estuary and just the contamination across board. However, the hesitation of MPP to clamp down on this whole thing is because those engaged in the activity are mainly in, the Ashanti regions and its environs. And so they feel like taking a stand to it will affect, because it does provide employment for the younger group, even though it's not being done in a way that is sustainable environmentally. And so clamping down on it, they are making that connection that it will affect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Fifi, quickly again, I mean, I hate to bring you and pull the NDC's position on this matter, but election is about, especially in the case of Ghana, choices between two political parties, right? This election, as we said, the dominant issue now turns out to be Galamsey. Now, the NDC is not in the hot seat, but should they get the nod come December 7th, what do you think they're going to do differently? Can they handle this thing in a way that will be markedly different from what the MPP has done so far? Will the will be there?
Thank you, Doc. This is a question that I've been asked numerous occasions. Before I go straight to that question, Alfred did mention in his submission, about KJ4's statement and the MPP strategy. He doesn't get it in terms of what they're doing, that they think they should go into the election thereafter finding a strategy for Galamsey. And the answer is very simple. KJ4 himself is involved in Galamsey. You can go and check. It's a fact. His excavators were among the 500 excavators that were seized. He gathered his women and they went to a church to go and cry over that. He was actually, his company was incorporated with a Canadian firm. So KJ4 is a beneficiary from this madness happening in Ghana. He said, "Oh, I have a license." It doesn't matter you have a license, because these licenses have been issued to these people. The strategy of the MPP is the MPP knows they have lost the election. The only way for them to ensure they are financially sound when they go into opposition is to keep digging, destroy our land, destroy our water bodies, make sure their bank and accounts are filled with money so that they can go into opposition and find their way back.
So, Fifi, what you are saying is that the leaders of the MPP are trying to throw the foot soldiers under the bus, or what? Because, I mean, it's not everyone that can fill their bank accounts. It's got to be the people who are in positions of power right now, right?
The MPP has issued over 1,000 licenses to their own base to do Galamsey. So imagine that. It's them doing the Galamsey, and it's not just coming from me. It's coming from the MPP, even bakeries themselves. That is us doing the Galamsey. Hence, it's difficult for government to speak against it. And we saw that in Professor Frimpong Boateng's report as well. It confirms. Gabi, who is a prominent member or party president's niece, is the one defending companies whose excavators have been seized and have been asked to leave the forest. Gabi's firm is the one defending them. Yeah. It's all in the report.
But Fifi, apparently there's some horse trading going on. I don't know where I came across this information, where there was an NDC, I don't know if it was an MP, but some leading person in the NDC who had some concession, right? And when MPP came into power, they took it away from him. And he threatened to expose them, and they kind of went into a partnership where he has some concession. The MPP guy has some concession. And even though they are opposition, but they are all grabbing the proceeds from that mine in harmony. So again, I mean, I would really like the MDC to articulate clearly its position on Galamsey once it comes into power. Is it going to be a complete ban so that we would reconsider or re-examine the manner in which this mining is done? Or, because you can't be wishy-washy about it. You can say you're going to do something about it, but what are you going to do? And they should give us a clear time frame that when we are in power, it's the most topical issue going into this election. So they should make a commitment that when we come into power, these number of months, this is the action that we are going to take to address this issue. And I think that if,
I'm happy
yes.
to address this because these things they've been labeled in our manifesto. If you look into our manifesto, for the sake of time, I'm not gonna go and then quote you. The page is on there, is labeled on our manifesto. The only thing that is missing from it is there's no timeline, as you just mentioned. There's no timeline on it. But I believe some of these things we can go back on it and put timeline on it because it's very, very critical issue and it concerns every Ghanaian. It doesn't matter whether you are NDC, MPP, CPP. This thing is affecting entire Ghanaians and it will kill all of us off. You will be thinking that you are safe. You go on holiday and that's it. You might drink a water, you will come back with liver or kidney issue. So this is a critical issue that we need to have a look at and deal with it as a country. The NDC have always said Galamsey was there before Ghana was formed. Galamsey was there in Gold Coast, the old Gold Coast. Galamsey has been there through Nkrumah's time till today. But this manner of Galamsey that we are witnessing for the past 4 years, 8 years, we have never seen anything like it. The NDC is saying these people who have been doing this, the small scale miners, they are going to actually set up an education body where they will go through a proper training and talk through how to do these things ethically. Make sure they are properly regulated. Make sure the right equipments are given to them. And also make sure that the geology mapping, which shows where the gold is given to them. When the big companies finish some of their their pace that they don't use it anymore, this will be reallocated to them. At the moment, what they are doing is they are all over the place. Try and error, forest reserve, water bodies. And the NDCs have also said that emphatically, nobody, even if you are the president's daughter or son, you are not supposed to go and mine on any of our water bodies or our forest reserves. If you are caught, the law will deal with you strongly. And I believe this is a very strong point that the NDC have hammered on. We wish the NPP could do the same and take action on such to stop the damage that is happening. And they haven't been able to do that. So these are the things that we have actually coined in our manifesto, and we will ensure it's done. Look, we were in power from 2015, rolling all the way from 2012, rolling all the way down. Did we see this level of pollution with our water bodies? Did we ever issue licenses for mining to be done on our forest reserve? No. I'm not surprised with the narration that you are giving. I'm not saying that every single Galamseya is an MPP. And I'm not surprised that you find some NDC miners in there. But if they are doing mining and it's not ethically being doing right, then they need to ask themselves, because time will come, their own party will make sure they are jailed. And the NDC have record of such. It doesn't matter you belong to the NDC. If you go and do what is wrong, and President Mahama has said it, he will not support anybody who will go against what the constitutions of Ghana says. Thank you.
Okay. Well, anyway, So, I mean, I basically would like us to conclude on this matter, but very quickly, right? We are in the election year, and I just want to get your impressions about how the various campaigns are going. The NDC was making a case about getting an independent body to audit the electoral roll, right? And the argument is that there's been evidence of some unapproved activity, the transfer of registrations of which weren't formally approved by certain electoral officers. So their position is that the electoral roll has been tampered with, and so they needed to get an independent body to do some forensic. The EC has pushed back against that. They've largely argued that they really have no hand in this election, right? They are not, they are an arbiter, but they have no horse in the race. So, taking the positioning of the EC into consideration, are we headed for a free and fair election? But also, you can touch on the various campaigns and how they are doing. You know, how is the Baromir campaign doing? I haven't heard much of them lately. The NDC had the prayer session where they invited the clergy. I think that's what got most of the news all of last week. So they have been occupied the space. So Alfred, I'll give you the first take on this. What's your impression of all these issues surrounding the upcoming election?
Well, I think routine, like independent audit of the voters register should be a requirement. It should be something that is built into a democratic process. Because if there are control weaknesses that makes the register susceptible to all these things that happened, even in the case of the Pusiga transfers, like I cannot understand why somebody is able to. So basically, what level of access do people have, right? Because when you think of any IT system, you have to make sure that the accesses are segregated and all of that. So if there are some control issues within the IT system, an audit will give you that full picture, right? So I think it's a continuous improvement opportunity for the Electoral Commission. So I cannot understand why the EC will be opposed to an audit. Again, it comes though back to the idea of this partisan thing. Because it is the NDC that is calling for it, is the NDC that is complaining. And so it is easy for the Electoral Commission, which I mean, the commissioner is appointed by the president. So it's not as independent as we would like it to be. And so you see, like, it's very obvious when the NDC is in power, they stand with the Electoral Commission, they defend the Electoral Commission. When the NPP is in power, they defend the Electoral Commission. So you could clearly see that it's not an independent institution. But I couldn't this is where my issue is. Like, they have to be able to allow an audit so that they can identify some of these control issues. And some people have made this argument that, the exhibiting the voters register in itself is an audit, but the system that created the register, right? If there are some control weaknesses in that system, it is only having an independent body looking at it that you will be able to identify some of those issues. Because, see, if you've managed the same system over and over and over, of course, you're going to have some of these stuff. And then the other thing is that the system that is used, right? I mean, it's a system that is, and people have made this argument about, the EC is, we don't want an independent body coming to look at the EC system, whatever. The system that the EC uses is a third-party system that was bought. Right. Yeah. And so that's the thing. One of the other things is that over time, the Ghana's Electoral Commission is able to make some very wild claims without evidence. Mm-hmm. Right. I give you an example. 2016, in 2020, going to the 2020 elections, they said the whole idea of the voters register was bloated, and they've talked about this a long time. Like they started saying this even when the NPP was in opposition. They were saying that the voters register was bloated, right? And so 2016, they tried to get it, try to see if they could compile a new register, and that was how the whole let my vote count campaign started in 2015 and all of that. So in 2020, they made people go and line up during the pandemic, got people to line up to register to get for a new ID system. Fast forward now. So in 2016, the number of voters to the total national population was about 55%. Right now, it is 57%. And nobody is talking about a bloated register, right? Because at the time, the EC was able to make those claims that, oh, the voters register is bloated. And nobody really, of course, people like Imani and stuff would challenge.
So were they saying that 50% was too high for?
Basically, so they're saying that 55% is too high. Now it's 57%.
And that was 55% of the of Ghanaian population, or what?
Of the total population were on the voters register.
Can't we easily verify this by the age groups?
Yeah, right? Well, you could. The thing is that a key indicator usually that would tell you this, like whether the voters register, because you have to also see that it's comparable to other places, right? And when you do the analysis, it's usually comparable. So
but the age distribution across countries is different, right? So if we have
regardless, you could compare to generally, like a lot of African countries have similar age distributions, right? African countries tend to have similar median ages and stuff. So you can make that comparison. But basically, the voters register, but you can see nobody's making that argument now that this current voters register that was compiled in 2020 going to this election, nobody's making the argument that it is bloated. The other thing is one of the things that I thought about was, how couldn't the NDC be able to establish consensus with the other political parties? I think was it just the PNC or something that supported them, or the PPP or something that supported them at IPAC?
Yeah.
So it felt like all these other ones, but also look at the composition of IPAC. And I'm not here to denigrate anybody, but if you think of the people like GFP, like Akuadonko on there, and all those things, like, what are they going to contribute? I understand they are all political parties, and I'm not to denigrate them. But
no, I mean, you have every right to, because I'm even of the opinion that there should be some sort of initial filters with respect to who qualifies to get on the roll.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we have an election system where we can go to second round of election, right? So that the smaller parties will drop out and leave the two dominant parties. Similarly, getting on the roll can be an electoral exercise in itself, that you have to demonstrate prospects by some ways before you get on the roll. So, I mean, I don't think it's an undemocratic thing to do to have an initial yardstick for getting political parties onto the roll, because we've seen the impact of that. I mean, you have a list that is 13 candidates on the roll, which I believe is really unwarranted. There are some people on there that don't need to be on there, just going to cause confusion on election day. Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, it comes back to it's an accountability issue, right? The Electoral Commission doesn't feel that, because at the end of the day, the government of the day is in support of it, right? As long as the government of the day, you see so are you telling me that the NPP hasn't found any issues with the voters register? Like some of these issues at the end, like this is a party that claims to be dealing with facts and data. The EC give them data that they are looking at. Are you telling me the NPP hasn't found any issues? They probably found some issues, but they won't communicate it, because, of course, if they do it, then it will appear that they are supporting the NDC. But the NPP historically has been very instrumental in our electoral processes, and even think of taking the 2012 elections to the Supreme Court. All those things are things that were supposed to be, that are really strengthening the democracy, right? So it's very surprising that you get into power and then all of a sudden it's like all the state institutions are good. And one more thing that I want to say, that I just feel that there are people that they're civil servants, career civil servants, right? That, you would expect them to show a level of professionalism, that they now get some appointment from the political parties, and then now they see themselves as politicians. So I was surprised to hear the deputy electoral commissioner in charge of operations, Samuel Tete. He has been with the EC for so long. Like, he has gone through the ranks. This guy was basically saying that, the 2016 voters register had pictures of animals and stuff on it, and the NDC didn't raise any concerns about that. This is somebody that is this is an organization that basically has made you, basically the organization, you were part of it. So you are proud right now to say that in 2016, the voters register had animals on it. You're a career civil servant. You're not a politician. He's not a politician. He is somebody that is like an EC person. Like, so I heard this guy speak and I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You're basically telling everybody that the commission is incompetent.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
And this, you are not a politician. Of course, okay, the MPP appointed you as a deputy, but he was director of electoral service at the time. It was a non-partisan position.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Look, sometimes I wonder how unprofessional some, especially the EC, over the course of this election season, there is a lot of unprofessional conduct that has went on. You listen to the utterances of some of their commissioners, and then you're amazed, right? So I'm not surprised. But
like, for example, if somebody like Osman Asari says something, I'm not surprised by that. He's a political scientist. He was appointed by the government. But I'm talking about somebody that is long time. It's not like he came from a different government agency. He was part of the electoral commission. He was like a district electoral officer, went to become a regional electoral officer, eventually became a director of electoral services. So he's like deep into the EC. So he is the one that has the institutional knowledge, right? But for him to portray the EC like that in 2016, I'm like, wow. Yeah, this guy, he's a politician.
Yeah. All right, Zita. Let's hear from you. What do you think about all that is going on in this these few months leading up to the elections? You can comment on either this EC, the NDC's campaign, Baumia's campaign. You know, what is your impression of the scene?
No, interesting stuff. I was not. My issue is with the interplay of religion and politics. For me, that dichotomy does not sit well with me. As somebody who is extremely critical and critiques the version of the Christianity that we practice as Africans, you know, and the history of how we were, you know, ideologically controlled by our colonial masters, so they can perpetrate the type of violence that they perpetrated against us. It takes me back to, you know, recolonization for me, when we have that interplay between religion and politics. But we also know that it both go together, because I'm sorry to say, but most Ghanaians lack independent critical thinking. When it comes to religion and ethnicity, we lack the ability to have that independent thought. And so it is that blend of politics and religion that it didn't sit well with me. But if you also want to win, you need to be playing in the corridors of religion. Like we saw Baumia saying that, oh, the churches are doing good stuff. You know, when I come, they'll get a tax break. And then when he was called out on it, he said, oh, no, he wasn't going to give them a tax break. He was just trying to applaud them. And now we see this hypocrisy of some men of God who had publicly spoken against Muhammad openly and called him all sorts of names. And then this week we saw laying of hands. To me, it's just, can we just, you know, separate the politics from the religion and allow and I want dear men of God in Ghana, focus on salvation. That is your business. Stop being a jack of all trades. Focus on salvation and get our souls saved, and leave the politics out. But that murky marriage between religion and politics, for me, it does not sit well with me. But for you to also stamp your hold in Ghana when it comes to, you know, how the election turnout, you need to be visiting churches, you need to be playing this religious things. Even if you're a Muslim, you go to church and you be kneeling down and just be acting out, you know, these things. And dear Ghanaians, stop listening to prophecy. We've seen the performer. MPP living power is nothing new. Like, you don't need a prophet to tell you this is how the election will turn out. Everything, all indicators have led to the fact that the MPP have not performed well. And so please do not allow all these religious people to kind of infiltrate your thinking. But on the issue of the EC, I was surprised at the IPAC meeting, one presidential candidate called Akbalu, unfortunately, clearly looking like he's from my home, from the Volta region. I was quite disappointed at his statement that the NDC should back down when 50,000 apparently dead people, ghost names, these people were dead, were found in the voters register. I I agree with the forensic, not just the an auditing, a forensic audit of the voters register, but even of the IT system or of the electoral commission. I think is something that we should strive for, and we shouldn't be partisan with it. You know, unfortunately, it seems like NDC didn't have a lot of supporters at the IPAC meeting, and so. But I'm glad that the NDC is watching keenly and bringing some of these issues out. But like Alfred said, the electoral commission is not no apolitical or non-partisan. Since you're appointed by the executive or the president, by and large you are likely to be leaning towards that direction. And so I hope that I know we only have a few months, close to 60 days to election, and so there's not a lot of time, but whatever can be done to kind of clean the register to make sure it's an accurate representation, that would be good, because during up to this IPAC meeting, there have been a lot of inconsistencies. The Electoral Commission using Coral Draw and making like wrong numbers, wrong computation of the number of people who were registered. Like, it has not demonstrated competency. We know that they said biometric machines were stolen at a place that is heavily guarded with security. Inconsistency. Sometimes I even heard they auctioned computers, old computers. Like, these things have not instilled trust in us ahead of this election. So it is too many inconsistency with the Electoral Commission. Dear opposition, stay on top of this, keep bringing the issue out. But I was quite disappointed at Kofi Akpalu's statement saying that I was quite disappointed, that NDC should stop crying and that time is already, we don't have time, so they should be content with the current voters list, and then let's go ahead with it. If they could do a cleaning within the time that we have, to ensure that, of course, nothing can be perfect, right? We all hope for an idealistic situation, but for us to ensure at least a competent level of consistency, and making sure that people who are registered will show up and there's no ghost names and people who are dead are still in the register. It doesn't make sense. Make sure you clean the system, let things be aligned. If we can get 80% confidence level, hey, we will go with it, because no system is perfect. But I was quite disappointed at Kofi Akpalu's statement and the fact that he addressed himself as the next president of Ghana. If there's one thing I've learned from politicians, is to have audacity and to be relentless in that audacity. You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Yeah. So on the matter of the prophets, Thomas Hobbes once said, the best prophet is the best guesser. And the best guesser is the one who is most studied on the issue that he's guessing about, because he is the one that gets the most signs on that particular issue. So it could be that our prophets are also people studied in the electoral process, and their signs are coming from their studies of the process. But
they are alluding it to divinity. That's the thing. They are alluding it to divinity, that God said. And once you tell an African, once you tell a Ghanaian that God said this is going, that is it. They don't hear anything. So yes, I agree that you make predictions if you observe. The young man in class 6 or SS can determine how the elections will go. But it is this infiltration of divinity that God said. You know our people, you know who we are. Once he said God said something, now even women like me, once somebody come and said, Dr. Z, God said I should marry you, we will relinquish rational thinking and vetting and say, okay, if God said let's go. I will not do that, but I'm just saying that when it comes to us, once we hear God, we abandon all forms of rational thinking, and I don't want that to be happening. Stakes are
okay. So, Fifi, you have the final word on this. Why is it that the NDC has failed to be able to garner some sort of support from the rest of the opposition when it comes to their stance against some of the malpractices of the Electoral Commission? Because I think the MPP historically has been more skilled at really getting the entire opposition to be behind them when they take a particular stand on an issue. But again, I always see the NDC standing alone when it comes to taking up the EC on matters that concern the upcoming election.
That's correct, Doc. And there is a common saying, when you stand for the truth, normally you see yourself standing alone. And that is what the NDC has been doing in this matter. They've been standing for the truth. Hence, you see them standing alone. Yes, it's been like that. It's a sad. I think tribe has a part to play in it, because you look at the smaller parties. When I watched the videos being played from IPAC, and I saw somebody like Ekwiadonko rather praising the EC chairperson, telling the NDC that you've been disturbing this woman from day one. It's God who brought this woman to us. It really, God brought her to us. She was appointed by Akufo-Addo. And then she went on the tangent that, oh, we're doing everything to frustrate her. We will be disgraced. This tells you the mindset of the ordinary Ghanaian. No disrespect to many Ghanaians, but the politics and the governance that has been given to certain Ghanaians, somebody like Ekwiadonko should not even be allowed to hold a political party, and her being a leader of a political party is a fact. It's a fact. But here we are as a country. Look at the assemble of the kind of people who wants to lead us. Akwalu is another one. So, oh, there's no time. Really? So even if who brewed the evil, and you can see that there's evil here, instead of digging it out and resolving it and making sure it's cured for us to move on, you turn around and say, for the time's sake, let us forget about it. Let's pretend it is not there. That is a very sad story. The EC has not covered itself with glory. And we all know that. Zita and Alfred has mentioned few of the things, so I don't want to go over and over the missing computers, the forensic edit that we've asked for is as simple as what we want to do. We want to make sure going into election 2024 is a level playing field. That's all we're asking for, because we could see it's not a level playing field. And why are we saying that? We have to raise the illegal transfer of Pusiga to the EC. The EC did not find this. It's not the EC findings. It's the NDC's findings. When those biometric equipments went missing, it was the NDC's findings again. So why do we as a political party always have to do the findings and come to you for you to go and verify and come back to us and said, yes, oh yes, it's true, and we've rectified? For that reasons, we have said, you saying you've rectified is not good enough. Let's go for an independent forensic audit to make sure we have a level playing field going into this election. And I will question anybody who kick against this, that we are going into such election, and then let's all start from the very same line. Why are people kicking against it? And then you have a civil servant who does not even understand what civil service means. As a civil servant, you are even powerful than a politician. Politicians will come, politicians will go. You will always be there as a civil servant, but rather make statements that actually help a politician or a political party. Is very worrying. And if we don't take care, we are gradually shaping our democracy away. And to me, that is what I'm worried about, because it will get to a point one day the youth, they might not come and demonstrate like what we saw them, that they've been arrested, but they might come with something else that I cannot mention on this program. And then at that point, what do we say? So when these concerns are raised, I think it doesn't matter who appointed you, what party you belong to, how you want to do your master's bidding, look into it. At some point, be brave enough and tell your master, Master, the game is over.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So thanks a lot, Fifi. Unfortunately, we need to draw the curtains here. We appreciate our viewers for joining us every Saturday to talk about, the main disturbing. Most of the time, it tends to be disturbing stuff, right? We wish that we always have some bit of good news to talk about, but I think at this point in Ghana's democracy, we need to focus on the very important issue, which also turn out to be very disturbing matters. So Zita, thanks a lot for joining me this afternoon. Welcome back. Alfred, thanks a lot. Fee, thanks for joining us all the way from the UK. We appreciate you. And until next time, I would say you should have a good rest of your weekend. All right. Bye, guys.